G'day, my name's Matt. This channel is called The Right Car, and this here is the Mazda CX-80. It is essentially a stretched 7-seat version of the CX-60 SUV, and essentially also a replacement for the CX-8. And if all of that is a little bit confusing, I totally understand. It is a very complicated SUV lineup for this brand now, but I'm going to tell you what you need to know about this particular model, the CX-80, what it's like to drive, what it's like inside, and what the best alternatives are in this review. So if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring the bell, and let's get to it. Mazda is expecting pretty big sales with this new CX-80, and it's easy to see why. They have gone pretty assertive with the pricing for the entry-level grade of this vehicle at least. That base model car is called Pure, and it starts at around $55,000 before on-road costs, and that gets you a 7-seat SUV with all-wheel drive as standard and a 6-cylinder petrol engine as well. I'll tell you more about the engines shortly, but let's talk about what you're getting as standard in that base model car. Things like LED lights, 18-inch alloy wheels. On the inside, you're getting cloth seat trim and manual seat adjustment for both front seats. And you're missing out on some of the nicer trinkets that you might expect. But you still do get a 10.25-inch display, which is not a touchscreen. And there's also a digital instrument display panel as well. It does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly. There's sat-nav, connected services, and a whole heap of standard safety technology equipment, which I'll get to later on. If you step up to the next model, it's called Touring, and it starts at just over $60,000 for the petrol, add $2,000 more for the diesel, and add a whole lot more if you want the plug-in hybrid. Yep, it's $75,000 plus on-road costs, so it is not the most sensible choice in my opinion, but it does come with extra kit over the petrol and diesel models. It gets a 12.3-inch screen on the inside, but all versions with the Touring nameplate come with things like leather seat trim on the inside. You've got heated front seats with electric adjustment. There's rear sunshades and a wireless phone charger as well. So those features might be worth the extra spend if you're considering just spending a few grand more to get into the Touring. Stepping up the ladder one more rung is the GT grade. As you can see, the pricing for the petrol and diesel still has that $2,000 gap, and if you choose the plug-in hybrid, it is still quite a bit more expensive. But the GT grade more generally gets a whole heap of extra equipment. There's twin 12.3-inch screens, so one for your touchscreen media system, one for the driver info display. There's 20-inch wheels as standard. It doesn't have the black trimming around the wheel arches. It gets color-coded trimming. And it also gets a few other features, including a panoramic glass roof, electronic steering wheel adjustment, heated second row outboard seats, and a Bose sound system, among other things. At the top of the range is the Azami model, again with petrol, diesel, and plug-in hybrid available. Pricing for it is getting up there for a mid-sized SUV, but it adds extra features like you would expect of a flagship grade. It gets distinct 20-inch wheels. It also gets a distinct-looking exterior design package, and on the inside it gets Napa leather seat trim and ventilated front seats too. But if that's not enough for you, you can fork out another $5,000 on top of that and get the SP pack, which turns this 7-seater into a 6-seater, and it gets ventilated second row captain's chairs, and it also gets a tan leather finish with a 2-tone steering wheel. So it adds a few extra features for the $5,000, but I don't know whether it's as practical as a 6-seater. It might be good for those who like to spoil their kids, I guess. So it's a pretty extensive range, isn't it? Well, let's talk about the alternatives that you might want to consider. All right, if it's my money, what I'm buying right now is the Hyundai Santa Fe. I think it is the best alternative to this, and it's not perfect. There are still some safety annoyances with that vehicle, but it has 7 seats with plenty of space. It's got lots of features if you buy one of the high-spec versions, and you can get it as a 6-seater or a 7-seater, depending on what you want. But there is plenty of value in the entry-level versions as well. It starts at $55,000 or thereabouts and ranges up to almost $80,000 for the high-grade calligraphy model. And I think it's a fantastic vehicle because it's hybrid as standard, but there is a powerful turbo petrol 4-cylinder without hybrid tech coming soon, and it's going to cost less as well. So it might be worth considering, might be worth waiting for that turbo petrol model, but Otherwise, you might want to consider the Kia Sorento. I really like it a lot as well. It's got the choice of petrol, diesel, hybrid, and plug-in hybrid available depending on your budget. And personally, I think that the diesel is the pick of the range when it comes to the Sorento. It's a really nice car to drive. It's got lots of practicality, lots of great features inside. And apart from, again, some mildly annoying safety technology, it could be a really fantastic option for you. Finally, if you can wait a little while, I would recommend doing so because the Skoda Kodiaq could be worth waiting for. I think that that new generation model, which I drove in Germany recently, is a very impressive vehicle with plenty of practicality. It is a Skoda, so it manages to fit lots of space into a smaller footprint, and I think that it could be a fantastic choice for you if you can wait. It's going to arrive in 2025. Would you wait, or would you choose one of those other options, or would you choose this? Let me know. According to Mazda, this vehicle was supposed to embody the mindset of graceful toughness. Now, I cannot see the toughness for the life of me, but I can see the graceful bit. It is a pretty elegant looking piece of design, although I don't necessarily think it's to my tastes. You tell me what you think in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts. It does still have that very cab backwards long bonnet design, which is obviously part of the idea with this 6-cylinder inline rear-wheel drive biased all-wheel drive model range. And I think that the rear end, well, I'm not so sure that it looks as good as it could, or maybe it's just my tastes, but you tell me your thoughts. Let's have a look in the boot and see what kind of space we are dealing with here. It is set up in 7-seat layout right now, so you can see for yourself, you do have still quite a bit of space behind the third row of seats, even in place. And I'll put the figure on your screen so you can see what cargo volume it is officially. A couple of features in the back here that I want to call out. This high-spec version has 12 volt here, a little power point there as well, some shopping bag hooks, which is always handy, and underneath the boot floor there is your cargo blind and also a couple of other features, including an air compressor. That's right, no spare wheel for this vehicle, which could be a deal breaker. I can understand that. Now let me fold down these seats and show you what you are working with. Just pull this tab, drop them down. That's very easy. You can do it one-handed, as I'm showing you right now. And those tabs, they don't fling too far forward, as is a bit of a common complaint in 7-seaters like this, but you can see for yourself, as a 5-seater, it's got plenty of space. And if you are just looking for a larger booted CX-60 with bonus seats, it could be a really good option for you. But tell me what you think. Is that a workable amount of space? I'm going to show you what the space is like for an adult in the third row shortly, but let's check out the front seat stuff first. Does the CX-80 feel any different to a CX-60? Well, not really, but does it feel like a big upgrade from the CX-8? Yes, it does. It is a much more upmarket feeling cabin in this new generation large SUV range. And I have to say, I do like the displays in here. I do like the design in here, and I do like the controls, but let's dive into a bit of detail. So you've got a 12.3-inch display in this higher spec version of the CX-80, and that is a nice feature to have. It does have a bit of information available to you to cycle through if you want to. There's another 12.3-inch display in this spec as well. It does have touch capacity if you're using Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but otherwise you need to use the rotary dial controller down here to adjust things. And look, that does take a little bit of getting used to compared to some other vehicles which are primarily touchscreens, but I think that those are nice tactile controls. They feel nice to use as well. So that's a bonus in my opinion. And the menus and the display here, I think it's a pretty good system. Generally, it's got built-in sat-nav, as I said before, and you've also got a few other features in here. Like I said, there's a multitude of settings that you can go in and play with. You get to learn these systems pretty easily compared to some other vehicles that have maybe a bit more confusing displays and setups. Now, down below, there's a climate control panel, which I think is brilliant. Yes, so you've got your climate control adjustment. So strangely though, you don't push up to push up the temperature, you pull down to push up the temperature, which I think is a bit of a peculiar thing, but maybe that's just me nitpicking again. You've got a fan button adjuster there as well. You can adjust where the air is flowing, and you've also got your heated steering wheel and heated seat buttons if the vehicle that you're in has those features. So that is very nice to use and very well, conventional, I would say. You've got cup holders here with a cover if you want to cover those up for whatever reason. And this particular finish on this grade, I'm not so hot on. It does look okay, but it also could be just as at home in a SsangYong or a Mahindra, in my opinion. And between the seats, there's a covered center console bin, which is quite shallow. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't have the biggest center console area. You've got some USB-C ports there. You've got a glove box over here, as you would expect. There's bottle holders in the doors. And in terms of the other finishes, yes, you do have this nice trimming with this stitching across the doors and across the dashboard, this nice little piped line across here, and this almost Volvo-like element that runs across the dashboard, which is a soft touch finish. There's soft touch plastics up here. And speaking of soft touch, just have a look at this. This whole armrest is like a squish fest. It's a bit too squishy, if I'm honest. But hey, I think that you'll get used to this cabin pretty quickly, and the seat comfort is decent as well. In terms of the other up high amenities, you do have vanity mirrors with lighting as well. It's got a sunglasses holder. Up here is your SOS button, because it does have connected services, so you can call for help if you need it. Auto dimming rear vision mirror on all grades as well. And you've also got your sunroof in this particular spec too, which is a nice big glass roof with that panel running across the middle there to help keep it stiff and stable. But it does add to the backseat experience with that big glass roof. In fact, let's jump in the back now and see what it's like. Righto, so this seat is set for my driving position at 182 centimeters or 6 foot. You can see I've got plenty of leg room and knee room and foot room, and headroom is actually okay as well. Anyone 6'4", 6'5" might find it a little bit tight, but hey, don't be so big. Now, back here, you do have some extra features that you might like. You've got map pockets. Down here in this particular grade, you've got this climate control panel as well, with the outboard seat heating buttons there too. And your directional air vents are there. And yes, in most grades, you get these sun shades built into the doors, which is good. You've got lights where they should be, so they're in a nice position to help you see what you're doing at night. Grab handles, and also little coat hooks there too. Like I said, the view out there is not too bad. But hey, this seat has been set for the most accommodating position. Let's slide it forward and see just, well, yeah, you can be uncomfortable if you want to, but that will help those in the very back row be more comfortable. So we'll get into the back in a sec. I just want to call out the fact that you do have ISOFIX points in the window seats back here, 3 top tether points for the second row seats. There's a flop down armrest with cup holders as well. And let's have a look at the third row entry and exit situation. Let me call out first, you do have 90-degree openings for the doors, so that does make a big difference in terms of getting into the back, but just be mindful, they do open out quite a long way, so make sure your kids don't dent the neighbour when you're parked at the shopping centre. Now, in terms of the operation for this second row seat, to move it forward, you press this button down here, and that will tilt that seat back forward, and yes, you can push it forward out of the way. Then you can get into the back, and let's see what it's like. All right, this seat is not quite as far back as this seat. It's all the way back, and yes, it does have a little bit more foot room on that side, but it doesn't have quite as much legroom. And look, my legroom here is not too bad. I've got a bit of a gap in front of my knees, but that's because my knees are in a very upright position. My feet are tucked right in under there, and it's not a very comfortable situation for me. In terms of headspace, it's not too bad, actually. I'm 6 foot tall, and yeah, I can basically fit in here pretty comfortably, but just be mindful that this car does have very bouncy rear suspension, so it can be a little bit uncomfortable if you're going to be in the back row all the time. Just keep that in mind. If you have those that might be car sickness prone, I wouldn't put them right in the back. And in terms of the airflow, there are vents back here, directional vents that you can sort of adjust to get the air upwards towards your face, but it's not as good as ceiling mounted vents in my opinion. And there's no fan controller either. But you do get cup holders on top of the wheel arches. You've got a USB-C port there, and same on this side, cup holders, USB-C port. And if you're wondering about fitting child seats in the very back, you can. There are top tethers for both rear seats, but no ISOFIX in the third row. So do you think it's a practical enough family SUV for you and yours? Let me know. There are 3 different powertrain options in the Mazda CX-80 range, including the G40E, which is a 3.3 litre turbocharged inline 6-cylinder petrol engine. You'll see the power and torque outputs for it on your screen, and it also has 48-volt mild hybrid technology integrated into it. I'll tell you what that means for the drive experience shortly. It has an 8-speed automatic transmission and all-wheel drive. It's a rear-biased all-wheel drive system. There's also the D50E, which is a 3.3 litre turbo inline 6 diesel, and it does have a bit less power but a bit more torque. Mild hybrid too, again with an 8-speed auto and all-wheel drive. And then there's the P50E plug-in hybrid, which uses a 4-cylinder engine, a 2.5 litre, which is teamed to a 129 kilowatt electric motor and a 17.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. And the total combined outputs for it are pretty good. It's a pretty quick one, that car. It has 65 k's of EV driving range, and it has 7.2 kilowatt AC max charging, meaning a 90-minute charge from 20 to 80%. And look, I think that it does seem to be pretty impressive on paper, that plug-in hybrid, but less so in reality when it comes to the drive experience. But it does have decent towing capacity. The plug-in hybrid and petrol models have 2.5 ton braked towing capacity, but the diesel has less, 2,000 kilos, which is very confusing. And all of them have a maximum towable down weight of 150 kilos. Does that really matter? Are you the sort of person who's going to tow with a vehicle like this? I don't know, but let's go for a drive and see what it's like. Okay, so I've just taken off in the CX-80, and I gotta say, there are some things that still aren't quite right about this drive experience. The transmission, when the car is cold, can be quite chuggy, and it sort of feels like it's lurching, and yeah, it's not the most refined characteristic for a vehicle like this at this kind of money. And these 8-speed automatic transmissions that have been designed in-house by Mazda are different to most other transmissions. They don't have a torque converter, so they do behave a little bit differently, but I don't think that it's necessarily good enough for a transmission to feel clunky, especially when you're just doing light throttle situations like I was just then. The other thing about this transmission, it does have a really short first gear, which does make it feel a bit like it runs out of puff quickly when you're taking away from a standstill, but it does have ample power. Like there's but it does have ample power. Like there is heaps of grunt when you put your foot down, and it sounds really, really good too. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, most other brands have moved towards 4-cylinder downsized turbo petrol engines in most of their model ranges. Diesel's on its way out, but the fact that you do have the choice of diesel or petrol or plug-in hybrid and 6-cylinder power for the petrol and diesel models as well does make for a pretty enticing option, I would say, because, I mean, 6 cylinders means effortlessness, and this vehicle does have that in spades. It just gets away quickly when you need it to, and at speed the automatic transmission is pretty good, but it's just the lower speed stuff that you need to be mindful of. It might not necessarily be as smooth as some others out there. And speaking of not quite as smooth as others, the ride comfort for me is not there for this vehicle. It does have a softer sort of feel to it compared to the original CX-60 and even the revised CX-60 as well, but I still think that it could be focused more on those in the car rather than the person sitting here, because it has basically been designed as a driving tool, so it's more enthusiastic than most other 7-seat SUVs in terms of the drive experience, but it doesn't bloody need to be. It could just be softer and more comfortable and make everyone happy rather than just the driver. That's my opinion, and I just feel like they missed the mark a little bit in terms of the suspension and the body control and that sort of thing as well. And while the steering does have plenty of handling capability to it as well when you're going through corners at pace, for me, in terms of just, you know, trying to put corners together, it does have a bit of a slower feeling on center, and I guess it's more evident in the versions with the 18-inch wheels that maybe don't have as good tires, whereas the 20-inch wheel does feel just a touch more direct when you do apply lock straight away. So look, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. You do get used to the steering pretty quickly. It's got a fair bit of weight to it as well. And I think generally it's not a bad car to drive. It's just maybe not what I was expecting for a 7-seat family-focused SUV, and what you might be expecting either. I also just want to call out, it does have a regen braking system because it's got the 48-volt mild hybrid system, and it's not necessarily the nicest brake pedal feel in my opinion. It does have a bit of a solid pedal feel, so you do really need to push on the brakes to get the thing to stop, and it's a heavy vehicle, so it does take a bit of pushing. Love the fact that there is a surround view camera as standard for this vehicle. I think a nice addition would be a digital camera mirror, so you could flick it so you don't have to see all those headrests in your rear view. And also in terms of the visibility, this side mirror is just like all other Mazdas. It's not a convex mirror for the driver, and that means that it can be harder to see what's coming from behind you as opposed to the curbside mirror, which is a convex one. So yeah, little annoyances that could be easily improved, I would say. But yes, tell me what you think about that drive impression in the comments section below. All right, let's talk about efficiency. There are a few numbers you need to keep in mind for this vehicle. So we'll start with the most impressive one on paper, the plug-in hybrid. Yes, you'll see the number on your screen. That is an impressive number, but just like all other plug-in hybrids, keep in mind that's probably only going to be achievable for the first 100 until you run the battery out. Then it will need to use the engine more, so you can expect a bit of a higher number. Now I'll put the diesel number, which is also impressive for a 6-cylinder engine. That's because it uses a pretty lean burn element to it, so it will basically be more efficient than a 4-cylinder diesel in a lot of situations. Yeah, impressive, I reckon. And the petrol, well, you see the number for it on your screen, and I spent the majority of my time yesterday in the petrol, and I'll show you what I saw on your screen now. And I think that's a reasonably good number, but maybe a touch higher than I was expecting. But it was a lot of open road flowing driving, so not a lot of stop start stuff where you might use that 48-volt mild hybrid system a bit more. You also might want to keep in mind that if you choose the petrol or diesel, you get a pretty decent sized tank, and the plug-in hybrid does have a slightly smaller fuel tank capacity, but you need to run it on 95 RON premium unleaded. That's the recommendation from Mazda, so I would do that if I was you. The Mazda CX-60 that this vehicle is based on achieved the 5-star ANCAP safety rating pretty recently, but the CX-80 hasn't been tested just yet. It does have all the same technology and equipment as standard, things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's also a lane keeping system, blind spot monitoring, front and rear cross traffic alert, which is a real bonus, and a surround view camera is standard as well for this model range, and that is a big tick in my book. You also get front and rear parking sensors too, and plenty of other handy little safety features fitted to this vehicle, including a speed sign recognition system too, and it's not annoying, which is a bonus. Plus, there's also 8 airbags fitted to this vehicle. There's dual front, front side, driver's knee, front center, and full-length curtain coverage. Mazda offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty in Australia, and there's also a 7-year cap price servicing plan for this model range. And you need to pay attention to the service intervals for this vehicle because the petrol and the plug-in hybrid require servicing every 12 months and 15,000 Ks, but if you choose the diesel, it's every 12 months and 10,000 kilometers. And when it comes to servicing costs, they are not cheap. You'll see the average cost for the petrol and plug-in hybrids on your screen now over that 7-year period. So that's the annual service covered in terms of the average. And then I'll show you the average cost for the diesel. And remember, you need to take it back every 10,000 Ks, so it might be a bit of a pain in the bum. So yes, it's not necessarily affordable to maintain, but it's not the most affordable car when it comes to the outright purchase either. And when it comes to the ongoing ownership considerations, you do have a 5-year roadside assistance plan included. And hey, if you decide to finance through Mazda's financial services arm, you can also lock in the guaranteed future value of this product as well. So that might be worth considering. I can see why Mazda Australia is pretty confident that it will sell plenty of these CX-80s, and it is a very practical family SUV, and I can totally get behind the idea of 6-cylinder power in a vehicle like this. The drive experience is not to my taste. I don't really think it's comfortable enough for a family more generally, but hey, tell me what you think. Would that be a deal breaker? I'd love to know your thoughts, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring that bell, and if you want to, you can always leave a contribution by hitting the super thanks button below. Thanks for watching. My name's Matt. This channel's called The Right Car, and I'll see you when I see you.